Hey everybody, it's Holly here today from Market Pop, and we're going to be creating a project using the Flower Turnabout from Concord and 9th, and we're going to be using some Distress Oxide inks. They've just released 12 new Distress Oxide ink colors, so I'm going to be using a few of those, as well as a few of the old ones. So one of the great benefits of the new Distress Oxide inks is they are pigment and dye hybrid. So one thing you couldn't really do with regular Distress inks was stamp with them because you wouldn't get an even coverage from your image. Now I am stamping on Tim Holtz Distress Ink watercolor cardstock, and I'm using the back side of it, the smooth side. And I am using the Misty. So I'm starting out with the picked raspberry, and I'm just putting it down on my image. Now I'm not going to get a solid impression because I am using watercolor cardstock. If I were using smooth cardstock, then I would have a much smoother impression. But for the technique I'm going to do here, I actually don't want a smooth impression. You could do this technique with your regular Distress inks as well, but I don't think the effect would be as intense as it is with the Distress Oxide inks. So I started out by putting the Flower Turnabout die into my Misty, lining it up, and then you can get, there's a video on the Concord and 9th website about how to line these turnabout stamps up properly. So I just created the pattern and then put it in there. I started with the picked raspberry, and then I stamped that, and now I'm turning my cardstock one turn to the right, and then I'm going to use my second color, which is going to be Salty Ocean, which is one of the newly released Distress Oxide ink colors, as well as the picked raspberry. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process. I'm just going to put the Salty Ocean down onto the stamp, and then I'm going to go ahead and ink it up and then stamp it. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my cardstock off and turn it, and then I'm going to stamp it a third time with Cracked Pistachio. This turnabout stamp can be turned 4 times, but I'm actually only doing 3. And so, like I said, my final turn is going to be using the Cracked Pistachio ink. And then once I have it all done, I'm going to go ahead and take the image out of the Mini Misty and remove it from the template that I have there that I lined everything up on. Now that my image is all done, I haven't heat set it or anything. I'm going to go ahead and spritz it with the mister bottle here. And you want to give it enough of a spray that it's going to start moving some of the ink around. Don't worry about it moving too much. Just try to not over mist it in certain areas because you don't want to completely lose the details of your images. So I'm just going to go ahead, like I said, I spritzed it, and then I'm using my heat tool and I'm moving it around to help dry that. I want to make sure I move it in different areas to kind of catch any colors that might be trying to muddle together. But that's one of the things about the Distress Oxide inks, are they're pigment based, so they actually are opaque and they lay on top of each other. So you don't get so much of that translucent where colors hide with each other. You can actually overlap them. But I'm actually using them together wet, as opposed to laying one color down and laying another color on top, which is where you get more of that effect that they don't overtop. They lay on top of each other. So I'm making sure I dry the front and back of the cardstock. This also helps with the warping to keep it straight. Then I'm going to go ahead and use a paintbrush with some water on it, and I'm just flicking some splatters down onto the front of the card. And this will also help the colors, or the ink, to do its oxide effect when you add the water to it. So I'm going to lay the splatters down, and I'm going to go ahead and use a paper towel to lift the color up in a couple spots. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry that again with my heat tool. And I'm drying in between each layer because I'm going to be using some more oxide ink, so I don't want anything else to bleed from this point on. So just make sure everything's really good and dry before we move on to the next step. So now that everything's all dry, I'm going to go ahead and use the Black Soot Distress Oxide ink. The other thing about the Distress Oxide inks is they come off with a chalky finish, and because they're opaque, they have a slighter, darker color to them than the regular Distress inks do. Not really darker, but it's like a slight variation in the color of how they look. So with this Black Soot, if you look at it closely, it looks more like a dark gray instead of a stark black color. So that's why I'm using that. So I'm just using the flower centers and some of the leaves from the Flower Turnabout set, and I'm just stamping them in the Black Soot Oxide ink. And this is another thing, because you can actually stamp with this ink, I'm getting a nice clean solid image when I'm stamping with it, because I'm giving a nice firm pressure by stamping by hand as opposed to using the MISTI. So this is a great ink to stamp with. And there's so many more techniques you can do with it than just with the regular Distress inks. So I'm going to go ahead and finish stamping these, and then I'm going to go ahead and make sure everything's nice and dry with my heat tool. I'm going to go ahead and die cut a white circle using one of the inner circles from the My Favorite Things Tag Builder Blueprint 6. That's the one with all the tags, and I'm using the little stitch circle there. And I'm going to go ahead and die cut that. And then I'm going to stamp the thank you from the Flower Turnabout set here using the same Black Oxide ink. And then you want to make sure you heat set that as well, because these are pigment-based inks, so they are going to take a little extra time to dry just to make sure everything's nice and solid. They do dry pretty fast, but you still want to make sure they're good and dry before you start moving things around. And then I'm going to go back to the Flower Turnabout stamp that I have in my mini MISTI still, and I'm going to go ahead and take another piece of watercolor paper, or Bristol cardstock here actually is what I'm using. And I'm going to re-stamp another flower in the Salty Ocean and then another flower in the Picked Raspberry, just using two different flowers. And then I'm going to go ahead and spritz those with the spritzer bottle so that they look similar to the flowers that are on the front of the card. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors and cut those out. And then I'm also going to add the centers of the flowers with the Black Soot as well. So I just set everything to make sure everything's good and dry before I go hand cutting everything. So now that everything's all hand cut out, I'm going to go ahead and start assembling my card. So I've got a pink card base here, just standard A2 size, folded at the top. I'm going to go ahead and add some adhesive to the back of my watercolor panel. You want to make sure you add a good amount of adhesive because it might have warped a little bit. And then once I have my adhesive down, I'm going to go ahead and put that on my card front. Then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of the thank you sentiment circle there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape to the back of those two little flowers that I cut out as well. And I'm going to add those to the left-hand side of the sentiment. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the card using some sparkling clear sequins from Pretty Pink Posh and some Ranger Multimedia Matte. I also made a second card using this same technique, using some different colors. I used the Salty Ocean, Orange Lipstick, and the Twisted Citron Distress Inks. Some of those colors are from the first set of Distress Inks that were released in January, and then the other colors are from this set that were just released this month. So be sure to be on the lookout for some more videos using Distress Oxide Inks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.